Alright, so cool. I usually like to give a little demo on what we're gonna build just to get our juices flowing, to know exactly what we're doing this for. So this is gonna be the home page. It's simply gonna be a header. It's gonna say let's to do it. It could be whatever you want it to be, but in this case, I just thought that was kind of clever. Anyway, there's another button. It says go to the do's, and that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna click on it. It should bring us to another page. We have a search bar. If we have to-dos, we can use the search bar to look for a specific to-do. If we don't, we can use the plus button to add a to-do. And as you can see, a modal pops up. We can put a title, first to-do, and a description, a to-do description. And boom, we can press add, and now we see our first to-do, right? It's gonna show the title, it's gonna show the date that it was added, and it's going to show the status. By default, everything is showing us incomplete. If we press complete, then it marks it as complete, and it crosses everything out, the title and the time that it was added. We can also press undo just in case you did that by accident. You could do updates if you want to go in and actually update the information. You can press update, and if we go back, we can see that that was updated, and we can actually put updated to do. Press update, and you can see that the title is updated as well. And then, let's try to add another one. A second to do, second memo. All right, and then press add, and I can see that it's the first thing that's added here because it's the most recent one. You can see the time that it was added. And then if we want to search for a specific item, you can just press or put the specific title name, and you can see that it's putting it's putting the second to do as its own thing on the screen because the title contains what we're putting into the search bar. And if we erase what's in the search bar, you can see the other things start to appear again, which is just the other to do item. And we can also remove, and boom, we pretty much resetted everything. So you can see that it's using the CRUD approach, which is we're able to create a to do, we're able to update to do, delete a to do, and we're able to retrieve all the to dos because when we refresh the page, it would retrieve all the to dos that's currently in the database. And as you can see, we're just leveraging the API that I created using Spring Boot. So like I said, I'll leave a little description, or I'll leave the source code in the description just in case you guys want to look at it and try to replicate it yourself. So yeah, that's a little demo of what to expect and what we're actually going to build. We're going to be using the UI library Mantine, I think it's pronounced, Mantine. It's pretty much what provided the modals, the buttons, the search bar. Obviously, everything can be done with CSS, but I wanted to leverage a pretty modern UI library, so that's the library that I went with. So let's get started. So just so you guys can see what exactly I'm talking about, this is the Mantine library, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but this is as you can see, a fully featured React components library, and this is at mantine.dev. If I press the get started button, you can see that it comes with different things that you can download. So there's hooks if you want to download the hooks for state and UI management. There's the core libraries that we're going to use, which provides like the input, buttons, and overlays. And we're going to also use the modals because we need a modal. So when we add a task, a modal pops up and it will have a input box for the title and the description. So these are the three pieces that we're going to need. But if you ever do things with like a form, dates, notifications, Mantine also has it as well. And it's cool because even if we press these checkboxes, it will allow us to do an npm install for all the libraries that we chose. So cool. And if you need to know how to use it, right, this documentation is pretty clean in the sense that it puts it in its own section. So say for instance we want to do see what's inside of Mantine core, we can go in here and you can see, okay, they have a layout system for grids. So we can go to the grid section and see, okay, this is how you use a grid in Mantine, which I believe we're going to use, and we're also going to use a container So if you go into, I believe they have a search bar somewhere here, right on the right, and you put container, right, and you click on it, now it takes you to container, and it just gives a little description on what it does, which is, center the content horizontally with a predefined max width, and you can see little examples of what it does. So this is the default container, and if we use the extra small container, it makes it a little bit smaller, and we can give it a specific size if needed. So yeah, we're going to be leveraging this in our application. It just saves a lot of time. If you want something more specific, right, you can use CSS, but in this case, our application is going to be a little bit or pretty basic. So I just leverage some of the components that this library provides. And even if you wanted to make it more complex, this also provides some complex components, and you can also define some properties that you need. So like I said, if you need a container with a 200 pixel size, you can do that. With zero padding, you can do that. So I'm going to be leveraging this library for that. All right, so straight to the Next.js documentation, and I'll leave a link in the description to this. We are ready to create a project, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this command npx create next app at latest, because that means it's gonna retrieve the latest version of Next.js to create our project. And if you put a name after this, create next app at latest is gonna give a name to the project that you're creating. So in this case, we're going to be using npx create next app at latest space to do, because we want to create an application called to do, or you can even put to do dash UI, something like that, right? Something that helps help you remember what the application is about. But we're going to be leveraging this to actually create our Next.js application. All right, so hopefully you guys can see my screen, but now it's time to actually get our own version of the application onto our device. So we're gonna run that command we just saw, but before I do that, make sure you guys have Node installed on your computer. I'll leave a link in the description to Node. If you have a Mac, you could just do brew install for that, but I'll just leave a link in the description for the Node download. But after that, let's actually use the command. So what I'm gonna do is npx create dash next dash app as latest to get the latest version, and then the name that we want to give this project. So I'm just gonna call it to do UI or dash UI, and you will start seeing that look is gonna see, okay, do you want this to be a TypeScript project? I'm gonna say no. Would you like to configure or add ESLint with this project? I'm gonna say yes. And now it's going to start installing some of the dependencies like React DOM, Next Fonts, ESLint, and we'll just wait for that to finish. And like I said, it already comes, Next.js comes prepackaged with so many things that makes our life so much easier, and it can get us started in the dev lifecycle. All right, so boom, that took a little bit of time, but it is done installing. So I can cd into the project that I just created. Let me do ls to see what's going on in here. You'll see there's a readme in there. There's no modules, there's a public folder, and there's a pages folder, which I talked about, which we'll be putting our files in there to handle routing for us, a configuration file, and a style folder. So we're going to be messing around with all of this. We're going to install our dependencies in a few, but let's actually get this open up in our editor. So I'll be back in a few once I get this opened up in VS Code. All right, so I got VS Code open. Hopefully you guys can see it. But this is how our Next.js project look like in VS Code. We have our node modules, which is just handling the package that are being installed. We have pages, which we're going to be used for routing. But as you can see right here, there's already an index.js, which is going to be the initial file that we see once we start this up. And there's some other files that Next.js already comes generated with, such as this app.js, which Next used to handle our components. There's a document file which we're going to use to put our fonts in, because we need to link our fonts, because we're going to be using Google Fonts. So this is going to be useful. Then we have a public folder, which is going to handle some of the images that Next.js uses to for the website, such as like icons, or you guys probably see this icon whenever you go to a website. There's like an icon next to the name in the tab. This is what the fav icon is. So this is just a public folder that we can use to store some images. Then we have a styles folder, which this whole basically what it sounds like, styles, so CSS files. So by default, Next.js comes with some files that it uses for this index.js file, right? And you can see here that it's actually linking to get that specific icon that we have in this public folder, and some other stuff. And we're gonna actually run this in a few to see what pops up and how does it look like. But yeah, as you can see that this comes pre-populated with a lot of stuff. There's an ESLint file. This is a configuration file that we can use to specify some rules for linting. We have a get ignore if you want to use a if you want to put this on GitHub. These are some of the files that are going to be ignored. And this is just a Next.js or Next configuration file for Next. And the usual package lock file and package.json file, which includes some scripts that we can use to actually build the project, run the project, and start the project, or even use the linter. So and then there's a README if you wanna. It shows some instructions on how to use everything. It even shows right here we can use npm run dev to actually get this running, or to run the development server, which we're about to do right now. So let me just open up the terminal, new terminal, and just do an npm run dev, and you'll see, okay, I already have a port running on 3000, but the cool thing is it's just gonna go on the next port, which is 3001. So now that I'm on localhost 3001, you can see right out of the box, this is what was inside of the index.js file, and this is what's being outputted. This is the content, how it looks like. It'll point you to the docs if you want to learn about Next.js. You click here, some of the templates, how to deploy our application. So by default, this is what's being provided, and you can see right here, this to get started, to start editing. Right, we could start at the pages folder and go into the index.js, right? And you can see that this is gonna pretty much be the home page. Once we go into the parent folder of pages and define an index.js file, inside of that index.js file will be what is outputted when we reach our URL. And in this case, since this is a development server, our URL is localhost and a specific port. In this case, it's 3001, and this is what's being outputted. So we'll play around with that. We're gonna delete everything that was that came out of the box, and we're gonna start defining our own stuff. But this is pretty cool. This looks pretty cool too. So now I'm just gonna download some of the dependencies that we'll need for this project. I already discussed that we're gonna be using Mantine for the UI piece of the application, and I'm also gonna be using a library called moment.js because we're gonna be manipulating time a little bit, just so that it will be easier to see or to show to the user. So let's actually do that. So I'm just gonna I'm just gonna paste this in. So it's gonna be npm install, and it's gonna be Mantine or at Mantine/core, at Mantine/hooks, at Mantine/modals, and Mantine also depends on this at emotion/react, and then the last one will be moment, because we're gonna need moment to manipulate time, right? So we wanted to put it's gonna be able to parse time and format it in a way that it's easy for people to see. So press enter, and it will or should begin the npm installation of all these dependencies that we'll need. All right, cool. So we can see that everything was installed, and it shows each individual package that was installed. But now it's time to select the fonts that we want to use in our application. So let's go there. So the fonts that I'm going to get my fonts is from fonts.google.com. If I go back to this homepage, you'll see that fonts.google.com provides different type of fonts, and we can click on one and we can select a font that we want. In this case, there's a specific font that I want to choose, which is Rubik Final. but you don't have to use this one. You can use whatever one you want. And I already have it selected, but let me just remove it and then select it again. There can be different types, so if you click on this drop down, there may be different types, like, you know, bold and all that, but in this case this specific font only has regular 400. So I'm going to select that specific font for Rubik Vinyl, which is regular 400, and it shows a little example of how it looks like. And if I click on this button on the right, top right, it says view selected families, short for font families. Click on that and you'll see these are some of the fonts that I have selected, right? I had Roboto Condensed selected before. I'm just gonna remove them because I don't want them. I just want Rubik Vinyl. And what we're gonna need are these tags, right? Because what we're gonna do is take these tags and put it in the header of our application, so that when we start an application, it knows where to link and get those fonts, so that we can use it in our application. So I'm gonna copy these links, and we're gonna put it in a header in our application. So Google Fonts, it's free. So we can just, you know, use this to get whatever font that you like. And in this case, I'm just gonna use Rubik Vinyl. And you can even see here that it shows an example on how to use the font family in using CSS. So in this case, it'll say define Rubik Vinyl, and then there's a backup, right? So if you know if it's unable to make that connection to make or to get Rubik Vinyl, there's a backup of cursive just in case. So now let's talk about how we can add this, right? So we saw the underscore document.js file in our next application, but what this is going to allow us to do is that it's going to allow us to place these links inside of this head tag, right? We're going to have to open this up and we're going to have to place it in, right? We can't just put it anywhere. It has to be in this custom document that Next.js provides for us. And it's just good convention to do that. So this is what Next.js provides for us to be able to have something similar to an HTML body, right? This is a React application, or you know, this is this is a framework for our React application, but it still allows us to have the look of a HTML body, and then we can place it inside of a head tag just like we would with a regular HTML file. So I'll leave a link in the description to this if you want to read up more on this custom document file, but this is the file that we're going to put our links in. So cool, now that I'm back on the page, and let me just close out this, I'll go to pages and then I'll go into documents. All we got to do is first open up this head tag, right, and just erase it because it was just one tag, but now we have to actually open it up, and we're just going to paste in what we just copied from Google Fonts, which are these link tags, and put that there. And then I like to make some space, so just use the tab and a tab, and then let me just close out these tags, because that's why I was getting angry. You gotta close out these link tags. For some reason, when you copy from Google Fonts, it doesn't close the link tag, so it ends up, you know, making your application look angry. But all I gotta do is put a slash here at the end to close out the tag, and it should get rid of the red swigglies. And if we save that, cool. So now when we start our application, we now have access to the Rubik Vinyl font. Pretty easy. All right, so we got everything installed. We linked the fonts that we wanted. We went through what each individual thing means in our initial setup for Next.js. But now, in the next portion, we're going to actually start creating some components that we'll need. We're going to create the home page. And yeah, we're just going to, you know, start getting into the meats of our project. You know, the components is the most important aspect of React, right? Or in this case, it's going to be Next, but it's just a framework of React. But the component is what makes, you know, React, right? So we'll start on that in the next portion.